And we are live. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming back to the Entrepreneur Hour. Today is a Wednesday episode, which is always a book episode. Well, in the past, it has always been a book episode. All that probably will change. This may be the last book episode for a while. Because we're starting the Meta Bronx cohort. I mean, not cohort. The Meta Bronx summer program next week. And I don't know the format that I'm going to use for that yet. I have to think it through. So pretty much I'm going to take the rest of this week and next week to figure out what I'm going to do with the show for the summer. I should have some more involvement from the kids in our summer apprenticeship program. Definitely the startups in our cohort. A lot of our partners, maybe I can get on. I just got to figure it out. But updates, next week is going to be fun to start figuring out with the kids what they want to do. Because part of it, so this brings me to something that happened to me yesterday. A friend of mine reached out to me on Facebook and said, look, my daughter is to the age where, she's a teenager. She doesn't want to listen to her parents, but how could I help her to be more motivated or whatever it is to do something for her career? And I basically told him, I don't know yet. What I built Meta Bronx around is the idea that about what happened to me, right? I loved art. I loved computers. I didn't really understand what I wanted to do, though. And until I understood that, I didn't care about reading books, about learning, period, really. I just wanted to do art and have fun. Once I understood, whoa, there's a career in becoming an animator or a designer or a web developer, I got into learning. And part of what I want to do is, and what we built Meta Bronx around is the same idea for all kids, right? Kids in our communities, they don't really get that opportunity. So what I told them is, look, I'm learning. I don't know. What I would ask her, though, is if you could have your dream job and it has nothing to do with money did not even matter, what would it be? Minus entertainment. So a lot of the answers we normally get in Meta Bronx is, I want to be an NBA player, a baseball player, a rapper, an actor. I want to remove that as an option, though. That can be your goal, sure, and go for it. But I don't want it to be what you're basing your experience at Meta Bronx on. And, even my kids, right? My kids, I'm trying to get them to understand that, like my son wants to be in the NBA and he wants to be a gamer, right? Two things that I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm going to help you. Like he played in a tournament last week and he won money. He's 10 years old. And I'm like, look, that's good, but you have to have a backup plan in a way. And I used to hate when people told me that, but now I get it. What I'm telling him is, look, those careers you want, basketball player and gamer, are like 1 in a million, right? So you have to have other things. Even if let's say you do make it to the NBA, what are you going to do when you're 40 and you can't play anymore? So why don't you start figuring that out now? And if you are a gamer, you can play till however old you want to be. But part of me is thinking for my kids and anybody that has kids watching, try to figure out what they would like doing if money was no object. They didn't need to worry about money. I feel a lot of times we get answers like, I want to be a doctor. That answer comes from knowing that occupation makes a lot of money. So that's what I told my friend, and that's what we build the Meta Bronx around. So part of what I want to figure out with the show, the next step of the show is, how to make adults think that, right? And start moving in that direction, because in a way, entrepreneurship is freedom. To me, it's freedom. I get to do what I like. Not every day is a fun day. Some days is crazy. Some days I gotta stay up to 4 o'clock in the morning working on something that I don't want to work on. But it is my freedom to choose that versus having to do it based on someone else wanting me to do it. Right? So, and the career path I am going down is all based on my choices and what I believe will be the best life for me. So I want adults to think about that, right? So part of what this is a book episode, is I know very rarely do you grow up and you're doing the job you wanted to do as a kid, right? It's very rare. Like I wanted to be an astronaut, right? It didn't happen. But having them think about that, if I would have felt like that was more of a possibility for me as a kid, I may have dived deeper into like heavy mathematics and science, right? I was definitely a space nerd, like I still am. You see everything's about space everywhere. But what this book is talking about, creating innovators, and I told him he should check out the book because it gives you like some ideas on what you can do to like start giving your kids the environment to start figuring out what it is that has that intrinsic motivation for them, what comes from inside that makes them want to do it. So for me, it was definitely art and creating. But what really happened to me early in my 20s when I was working is I realized it wasn't art that was the motivator. It was learning. And it was interesting because the way I figured it out was I was working for Disney, right? My childhood dream was to work for Disney as an animator, right? But I just never thought that was possible too. Like there was astronaut, animator, those two things, right? One of the first jobs I got was to do animation for Disney for advertising. And I remember working on huge movies and not feeling that creative. And being like, why don't I feel creative right now? I'm working for Disney. What the hell? And what I learned was, I don't know how I got into it, but I hacked this ad to do something that ads had never done before. And that feeling gave me the feeling that I was chasing, the creative feeling. And what I learned was, it's not that I want to create art. It's that I want to learn and do things that make me feel creative. And then when I started researching, creativity comes from learning. And even right now, what I'm doing right now, I think I teach to motivate myself to learn more, right? So, because they say the best way to learn anything is to teach it. So right now, I'm learning all this stuff about startups, all this stuff about investing, all this stuff about creating a product, managing a product. But then I'm teaching it to the startups in Metabronx. I'm advising startups. I'm getting opportunities to advise more and more startups. I'm creating startups. And that all comes from my path, what I want to do. So as an adult, I want people watching this to say, am I in the right job? Especially right now. There's no better time than right now to ask you yourself that question, because sucks to say, but your job could be gone tomorrow. Like I'm literally here every day, people losing their job. And this is when people switch, and you hear it 2008, 2000, every recession. Oh, I was working a job I hated, then I got fired. So I said, let me work on this. So this is that time. You're living in that time right now. So what I'm hoping this book will allow is people to say, okay, maybe I can create my own path through an idea, right? Not because entrepreneurship is an idea, right? Like when I started Mass Ideation, I said, right now I work at companies and I always want to do the cool thing that they probably they're scared of because it's not on budget and it may not make the timeline. So I said, all right, I got to figure out a way to only be doing stuff like that. And I want to make as many good ideas like that possible. So I called it mass ideation. And I mostly became a production company though. People will come to me with ideas, I'll make them happen. Every now and then they will come to me with an idea that had never been done before. And it was like, oh yes, this is what I created it for. Because my idea was always, I wanted to be involved in bleeding edge technology and storytelling, right? And that combination, or one or the other. I always like those things. So when I started the company, I didn't know what I know now. I'm more than 10 years now past the day I started it. I basically created a job in a way in the beginning where I just had more freedom of choosing my projects, but it still needed, it very heavily relied on me personally. Then I built it to not rely on me personally, right? So, but a production company right now in this global economy, I would tell any production company right now, you need to start creating either a brand around your production company or some type of thing that only you can do, or it'd be very, very hard for them to find someone else like your company or some other group like your company to do. Because now with the global economy, now, especially right now, this was always a thing I've seen because I work so remote. If you can work remote, why are you going to work with a New York agency that costs a lot of money because their employees live in New York? You can work with people in another part of the world where it's cheaper. And that's going to start happening more and more. And there's going to be competition for production companies, and the price is going to keep coming down and down and down, unless you have something that says, well, if you want us, you got to pay for us. And we're the only ones that can do this. So choose or don't to work with us. So the reason why I bring this up is, if I had to do it again, and knowing what I know now, what would I do different? Is I would start out thinking, how can I innovate in the production company environment? Like back then, I really started out with banners. Banners was like 90% of my business. And I was doing a lot of them myself. I was really good at doing banner ads. Then I started getting more and more people helping me. But then banner ads it became more of an internal thing to agencies. And I'm going to have an announcement coming soon. I'm going to start working on, I have a partnership where I'm going to start working on a series about digital advertising with another organization. So I'll definitely be promoting that soon. But the whole reason I bring this up is, if you're thinking about an idea right now, you have to think about it on a global scale, in a remote environment, and how to innovate in it. So that is what the book will be about. But if you are thinking, what's my next career or what's my next move, and it's an idea, you say, I want to be an entrepreneur. Part of me is worried that too many people are thinking of entrepreneurship in the old school business models that will not work in the future. So things like subscription models are the future. Things like making sure you're fully taking advantage of online, making sure you're fully taking advantage of social media. Those three things right there, if you are not doing them, you're in for it. So this book is kind of like breaking down all that stuff. So right now, what I'm going to do for this episode is I'm going to go back with this lens of, I want to help people innovate. I want to help creators, investors, and supporters to understand what is a good idea and how to make it happen. So this way, I believe that covers everyone, and that puts people in a position right now, because let's say you do want to keep your job. I've seen people do this. I've seen multiple people do this. They keep a job for 10 years. They just invest. And in 10 years, they're in a position much different than they were previous to that 10 years. And so all it takes is 10 years. 10 to 30, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70. You could do it in 10 years. But what do you do in 10 years? So for me right now, I've said this in other episodes, my first 20 to 30, I learned how to do things with my own skills. I learned how to animate, I learned how to code, I learned how to design. I didn't learn business. 30 to 40, I learned business. 40 to 50, I'm 41, I'm learning how to create and teach. Content create and teach and grow my personal brand. That's been my path. Right now, no matter where you are in life, you should be thinking, what are the next 10 years? What do I want as my finish line in the next 10 years? And start working on it. That could be, I no longer want to have this type of career. I want to be in a different career. So now you start slowly working towards it. It takes longer than you expect for anything. So the book, I'm hoping, will motivate people to look at this and say, I have an idea. I know I don't want to work for a company. What can I start? How can I start this idea? So I'm going to bring it back to Notion again. Notion and Evernote is what I'm going to be sharing my screen, working on. And I'm going to start through that lens, just going through it. Anybody has comments or anything? This is my last show for like almost 2 weeks till I figure it out. So looking forward to getting it done. So all right, I'm sharing my screen. I'm also recording this now for podcast. So I'm wondering how that's going to work. Where you can't see what I'm talking about. But okay, so for those of you who can see what I'm talking about, here is what I was doing in Evernote. And I told you guys I started using Notion. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing in everything piece by piece from Evernote into Notion. So I brought in already my forward and my story, where I was at with it. Another super interesting thing I mentioned yesterday, if you didn't see, I got reached out by people who help people publish books. So normally people work with ghostwriters that they know or whatever. So this company, they find people to help you through ghostwriting and editing, finish your book. So that is something I'm really looking at doing, and pretty sure I'm going to do it. So right now, I'm trying to get it ready for that process. So, okay, my story was, all right, so now who are you? So this is where I was thinking about the type of person reading this book, right? So start with why. So that's a book that I highly recommend anyone read, especially right now if you're thinking about changing your career. One, because you either got fired or you're worried about getting fired. Another thing I thought about today, because sometimes I work with a bunch of different people, a bunch of different companies, and a lot of times I see something happen that I hate when it happens, but I understand where it comes from, is you a lot of times see people in work environments, usually when they have jobs, but in every situation, where they try to justify their salary. Meaning we're in situations and people are just making things harder just to have a say, to make sure they look like their contribution is being made so their salary is justified. And I remember the last time I thought about this, I really thought, man, that has to be the worst feeling, to know. Because what that means is they know that they are not as useful as they think or as they hope. So they're trying to inflate that so everyone around them understands that they are. People who are really understanding of their value don't do that because they don't have to, because they know, right? But people that don't know that, it's very easy to tell signs when you see it. And I know people watching in the corporate environment are probably laughing at what I'm talking about right now, because you see it all the time. It's like, all right, this is justify your salary 5 minutes. So I just hate when I see it. And I thought about it because I was about to do this. And it's like, if you're in that position right now, you should be worried. Because if you feel that, definitely someone else feels it. And when they start looking at where to cut, you may be on the chopping block. And I don't say it to like make fun. It's more about make yourself feel more, make yourself more valuable. If you feel like you are easily replaced or you are easily fired and the company can still go on, figure out how to make that not a thing. Like, figure out how to be more valuable to the organization you work for. I just bring it up because right now, I think a lot of people feel that. And if you feel that, that's a way of doing it. But as you make yourself more valuable, think about how to make yourself more valuable with skills and resources and connections that will propel you to the next version of whatever you want to be, right? So for instance, me, I'll give you my example. I never have to feel valuable or anything like that, because if somebody hires me because they feel I'm valuable, if they hire my company, it's because they feel we're valuable. But for the last 5 years, I've been wanting to get more involved in technology startups. I know how to build things, but I didn't know this side of the world. I didn't know investment. I didn't know venture capital. I didn't know startup, product management, all these things. So I started one by one saying, where's my weakness in these areas? How can I close that gap? First weakness was I did not know anything about what was the difference from making an app to being a tech startup. So I studied the game, started researching, understanding what's the difference between just making an app and Twitter and YouTube. And then I realized it's product management. What product management is, and it will be in the book, product management is you make an app, but that app is not done ever. You're watching what people are doing. You're coming up with new ideas to reiterate on that app. When Twitter was launched, it looked nothing like it looks today, because every week they have hundreds, if not thousands of people working on the next version. That's what makes a technology startup. That's what makes a good idea possible, a great idea possible. So that's one of the big things that I'm going to teach in this book. I took a course on it with people from Google, Spotify, all kind of startups. In the class with me, they would send people from those companies to this course to understand how to work in that environment. So why I bring it up now is because this book, the core of it is to look at any idea, any business idea you can come up with in that lens. So if I did that with mass ideation when I first created it, I think I would have saw the writing on the wall of where we're heading and done more about it. I knew remote was happening. I was one of the first to do it because I knew it was getting there. Did it. But I didn't innovate enough on knowing that. If I would have known that, what I know now, I would have done more to create scenarios where I would benefit much more from understanding that. So, for instance, a product manager will go and say, I'm gonna give you an example on Twitter. Twitter, when it first launched, it was just like a text message. You would text message Twitter and it would just put your type up. And people would read it, share it, retweet it. They started seeing that people would put a hashtag when they started a like-minded community conversation. So what did Twitter do? They said, let's make that easier for our audience. Let's make the hashtag clickable. And when you click the hashtag, you see everything in that conversation. That was what exploded the hashtags. That was a product management process. They were watching the app. They saw what people were doing and said, let me do something to make that easier so more people want to use this. So why I bring it back to mass ideation is I was doing remote. I've said it before. My biggest client, I literally have never seen them, never met them. We've never even had a video conference. even now, right? And I knew how to do that very well, but I didn't figure out how to use that, right? So I'll bring that back to an idea that you may have or somebody reading this book may have. So I'm thinking about it because to start with why. Let's say you come up and you say, all right, I'm really interested in fashion. I want to make a clothing line. I would tell you, don't think about a clothing line the same way people did even 2 years ago, which is, I'm going to make shirts. I'm going to sell shirts. I'm going to use social media, advertise. Social media to bring traffic in, yada, yada, yada. I would tell you, worry less about how much money you make on each piece of gear and figure out how to innovate to just make as many sales as possible through social media, online, whatever it is. Try to figure out how to make your website have as many sales per day as possible, even if you only make 1 cent per sale. Because if you do that, you can easily back in to making more profit per shirt. It's harder to back into the innovation though. So that's the kind of thing I want to get people thinking. Any type of business, nail salon, barbershop, anything, it can be done. You just have to have this understanding of the opportunities of innovation. So like I'll tell you, Barbershop Squire, that's an app that allows barbershops to do digitally what most of them don't do. So Squire made an app that all of them can use. That could have been an innovation made by a barber, but it wasn't because barbers are not thinking in this way. So part of me is like, all right, does the title need to change? I don't know. This is where, I'm looking forward to working with people that make books to just give me more pointers on that. That's another reason why I'm going to slow down on making these. I'm going to start dealing with that, and then I'll probably come back to it maybe after the summer. So let's get back to who are you, right? So the who are you portion of this is start with why, right? Start understanding your why, and then understand your mentality, your habits, your motivations. So I'm going to put who are you in Notion. Well, I did start this. So who are you? What I had here in Evernote was habits, motivation, fear of failure. So this is around mentality. So first you have to understand why you want to make this idea happen. Why you're the perfect person to make this idea happen, which is important. Person with access to a team that is the best team to make this happen. Then what mentality do you have to have? You have to have good habits. You have to have good motivation. You have to figure out ways of either making your bad habits better slowly. You have to figure out how to motivate yourself. Self-motivation is one of the biggest things an entrepreneur has to have. You have to not have a fear of failure. I'm going to put no fear of failure. And how to do that is funny because when I realized that was a large part of entrepreneurship, I started taking boxing lessons because I don't know where I saw it. I believe it was Mike Tyson that said it. Mike Tyson said, I'm always scared going into the ring. And I'm like, Mike Tyson is scared? Boxing must be a way to really manage fear. So I started doing boxing, and boxing definitely helped me with that. So what else we got here? So right now I'm not angling this enough towards investors and supporters. So this is all towards the entrepreneur. Judgment from family, overworking, overthinking, work-life balance. Part of me is worried that I'm making this too general, and I don't know what I should do about that. should I make it more just towards the entrepreneur, or should I like make it towards the entrepreneur, investor, and supporter? Because if it's in this case, this is all entrepreneur. There's really nothing about the investor or supporter. How I can angle it towards the investor and supporter is with investors. Investors like to invest in ideas that they understand, industries that they understand. So it's very rare you will find an investor that's willing to give you money for something that's in an industry totally outside of their comfort zone. So maybe what I can do here is I can start with the why, right? I can say, who are you, right? Okay, start with why. And then what I can do here is say, what industries would you have you worked in or would like to work in? I see a lot of spelling errors. Also, I'm typing around a mic. It's another thing. I'm gonna get some different equipment, lighting, maybe a camera. I gotta figure out. I'm gonna do all this investing and all this. I gotta figure it out. So, what industries have you worked in or would like to work in? So, why I bring that up? As a investor, like I just said, most investors want to invest in things that they are experts in or they want to get more into. They want to become more expert in. Same with entrepreneurs, right? I created a company based on what I was good at. But there was things that I really wanted to get into. Like I remember I went through a small stint where I was going to space startup events. So there's startups already creating startups for space. And I was like, man, I want to be involved in that. But I realized I'm always super duper early. So I said, you know what, maybe I'm way too early on this one. I'll be back. But that's how I did it too. Those were one of the first startup events I started going to because I was like, all right, I know it's going to take me a while to learn this stuff. Why don't I pick an industry that's some time away anyway, right? So I said space. But then I looked and it was like, oh yeah, in 2050, we should be going on our first version. I was like, whoa, that's a big jump. So I can say maybe what I do is mentality for each. What if I said the mentality of an entrepreneur? This is gonna be funny. I can never spell the word entrepreneur right. I try it different like every time and I never get it right. Entrepreneur, investor, and supporter. So I will talk about the mentality that you have to have in each. Mentality, whatever. The habits you have to have, right? So habits as an entrepreneur, there's habits as an investor, habits as a supporter. I have to think about that. But there's habits as an investor. Like as I've been learning more about the investment side of this thing, investors have pretty good habits. Actually, like you can learn a lot from investor habits. They are always thinking in a way. It's funny because if entrepreneurs thought more like investors and investors thought more like entrepreneurs, I think more things would happen. So that's kind of why I want multiple people to read this and start understanding each other. Supporters, what's a supporter habit? I gotta think about that. Motivation. Oh, I was gonna tell you about the investors. So investors look for things in their sweet spot, like I said. There's investors that only invest in a company once it reaches a specific level, it's in a specific industry, and is led by specific types of people. This is why investment has mostly went to white men, because investors have got comfortable with those key areas and say, okay, you check all the boxes. Now there's a new box that is getting checked more, but it's like, oh, a woman runs this, or a black man, or a black woman, or a Hispanic man, or a Hispanic woman. And now that box is starting to get checked more, and now we can start showing that we also can create winning companies. So supporters, again, I got to really think about the supporter. Habits for a supporter. Actually, right, I got habits for a supporter. You want to be researching the industries that you're interested in supporting, right? The reason you're a supporter is because you're interested probably in being an investor or an entrepreneur. Or maybe you just like the service. You might just like the service and you just like binge watching Netflix. But if you could invest in Netflix knowing that you're a user of Netflix, why not? So that's what I've been doing. That's how I've been creating my own habits as an investor. I've had my own habits as an entrepreneur. I've been, chinking away at the armor of that and trying to fix it for 10 years. Investor, I just started really looking at how to think like one and be one, really as a career. And a supporter, I guess I've been a supporter, I guess. All right. So a habit as a supporter could be something like research, look up 3 articles a day on industries you're interested in, companies you're interested in, startups you're interested in. So companies are things that already exist, and startups are things that are coming up. That could be a good habit. I do that. That's how I stay on understanding AR, VR, MR, AI. That's how I do it. So there you go. Supporter, I figured it out. Motivation. So for entrepreneurs, this is much more important than any of the other 3. You have to be very self-motivated. And there's a book here that I read that really motivated the shit out of me by Grant Cardone. I'm gonna link to it in the bio. I mean the bio of this on YouTube, really. So no fear of failure. I think entrepreneurs and investors really need to understand this, right? Because an investor, if you think an entrepreneur fails, an investor fails probably more than an entrepreneur. You're not going to invest in one thing and it's going to hit. You got to know going in that the odds are 1 in every 10 things are going to give you a return that you're going to be happy with. But if you're an investor that can help ideas and not just give money to them, that number goes up tremendously, right? So I'm going to give you an example. If you're an investor in Netflix, but you're also a movie producer or movie connected to the movie industry, you can bring content to Netflix, right? So now you're bringing content to, and I'm talking early on. Now Netflix is out. They don't need you for that. But in the beginning, they might have. So that's how you can help the company grow. You can say, all right, not only am I going to support this by watching it, I'm going to help by giving it money and getting it content. You weren't the entrepreneur, but you were an investor and a supporter. So maybe the way, maybe I create, what's the diagram? Where's the 3 circles? Entrepreneur, investor, supporter. That's good. And you want to be right in the middle. All right, that's really good. That's really good. Throw that live here on the show. Okay, so no fear of failure, because what will happen with investors, and I've seen it, and I've had investors tell me this. They got screwed on a deal, so the next deal that comes along, they don't invest in it, and that one skyrockets. And they're like, damn, I let that last deal keep me out of this one. And same with entrepreneurs, right? Oh, I don't want to start a company like that, or I don't want to be involved in a company because my last company I got screwed. And then that company takes off, right? You never want the past failure to change your. You should be educated and make educated guesses, but you shouldn't be making that failure the reason you're not doing something else. That's what I think. Mental health. So I need to do more research on this because entrepreneurs specifically is a very big mental health issue with entrepreneurship. We've seen it, people killing themselves. I get it because I've been in those situations where it's like the downs are just so down that you're like, damn, it's very rare, that you're like, I want to take my life. Like I can't say that I never thought of that, but I mean, I think every human thinks of it. I do think entrepreneurs think about it more. So loneliness is another big thing that they talk about with entrepreneurship. I don't know about investors and supporters though. Maybe I just angle that towards, maybe I create like mentality, entrepreneurs, investors, supporters. And in entrepreneurs, I give all of it. In investors, I give all of it. And in supporters, I give all of it. And depending on what you are, you can just jump to that section. Maybe that's the way to do it. Judgment from family. I can see that happening on all three, actually. On the entrepreneur, because sometimes your idea is going to sound crazy. Any innovation in the beginning is going to sound crazy. But if you're like risking your family's money, or you have kids and they may not be able to eat because you risk this money, I can see that pressure. Investors have the same thing. Supporters, sometimes they have that too, right? Like think about the people that are online to buy the iPhone the day it comes out and it's like $1,500. That is, sometimes your family gonna look at you like, dude, you're crazy, or girl, you're crazy. You don't have money for that. Overworking, this is definitely an entrepreneur thing, maybe an investor thing. Work-life balance, both entrepreneur. Finances, I think all three too. What's starting to scare me with this idea is I'm trying to angle it too much to make sure I cater to each area, and maybe I don't do it like that. If anybody watching has any ideas of how I could do it, that's why I'm really looking forward to working with these people. Finances. So this again was very heavily angled towards the entrepreneur side of things. So all of this was about figuring out how to give an idea your all. Need to really figure this out. Okay. What's the next section? Okay, this actually does work for all three. How to know you have a good idea. So as an investor, you definitely want to know that, right? You got to have an idea of what's in your sweet spot. Because as one of the first investors I spoke to, Puerto Rican guy actually out of Silicon Valley, that was from the Bronx. He's one of the first that I was like, oh, I can do this. He did it a long time ago. I can do this now. He said there's having an idea in the shower and exiting for millions of dollars. The closer you are to the idea in the shower, the more likely you will never get to the exit. So taking on ideas in the very beginning as an investor is the most risky, but it's also the most rewarding. If you take an idea out the shower and you give the person $10,000 and that idea becomes $1 billion, that $10,000 could turn into $1 million, $10 million from 10,000 or 25,000 or whatever it is. But it is much more risky. So there's ways that investors look at that risk early on. And the way he did it was he had this thing called the pizza pie method, and we adopted that at MetaBronx. And the pizza pie was there's 8 things that every startup needs to have. And if it doesn't have one of those things, it takes a plunge in his, viability. First thing he said was, does it have a visionary, a person that's the visionary, a hustler, and a hacker? So what that means is, do you have a team? Do you have a team that encompasses these three skill sets? Multiple people, one person can have multiple skill sets, but is all three of these skill sets on your team? And if not, he said, don't even think about it. Don't even like wait till they get to the point where they have that before you even think about it. So this comes into play when it's just you, right? You have this idea, but you are maybe a visionary. You're not a hacker. You're not a hustler. Or maybe you are a hustler, but you're not a hacker. You're a visionary because you thought of the idea, but you need those other two skill sets. Maybe you have all three. I have all three, but I don't want to do all three. I'm not doing all three. It's impossible. So I need to get other people. What I tend to do is, in my ideas, I tend to look for hustlers and visionaries. Even though I am a visionary, I know the tech part is one of the hardest things to find. So I'll be the hacker in the beginning. And then I'll find a good hacker very early on. How to know you have a good idea. If you are like me, you have 10 good ideas a day. Which ones are worth pursuing? So I definitely have to go deeper into this. And again, the pizza pie thing, we're doing something different with Metabox, and I am doing now my own version of this called the puzzle pieces. I'm basically making a course around the puzzle pieces and saying, do you have every puzzle piece? If you don't, there'll be a glaring hole to anyone you talk to about this idea, including potential collaborators. So remember I said entrepreneur, investor, supporter. You can be a supporter by joining an entrepreneur. And now you are an entrepreneur too, but you never thought of yourself as that way. You think about yourself as, oh, I'm not that person that's going to deal with the stress of entrepreneurship. But maybe you become an early co-founder, but the other person is dealing with more of that stress. So that's another thing I'm hoping I can do with this book is convert supporters to investors and entrepreneurs. Investors a lot of times are or do become entrepreneurs. And they also have to be supporters in a way. They have to think like a supporter to invest in an idea because they have to say, would I support this? Would people like me support this? And if they would, and they could see a lot more people like them supporting it, then they would invest in it. So that's how it all connects to me. How to clarify your idea. This comes down to what I was coming up with a few weeks ago, and it does go back to each puzzle piece will have clarify, plan, do, I believe, right now. And I'm going to work this week on the class too with the guy. So let's say your puzzle piece, first puzzle piece is team. Like I said, do you have a visionary? Do you have a hacker? Do you have a hustler? No, I don't. So now you have to clarify. Which one are you? Like I said, in my case, luckily I have been all three. So I can say, okay, which one do I need to bring on first? For me personally, it's probably hacker, because that is the one that I do not like doing the most. I love hustling, I love being a visionary, but I hate hacking. I can do it, so I do it. So that's mine, right? That would be how I clarify myself. And I say, all right, I have an idea. So for instance, when I had this barbershop idea, that was the first thing I would bring on, a hacker. You may be the hacker. And you may say, all right, I don't have an idea though. I need a visionary. So now as a supporter, you find an entrepreneur that had the vision to join. And in a way, you are investing in that idea. So that's another thing. You know what? The more I think about this and I speak it out loud, that's the beauty of doing this. You know, to get an hour, I'm literally talking to myself for an hour on camera. So this will be an exercise later in the education of insanity. But these things are interchangeable. An entrepreneur, an investor, and a supporter, you kind of jump between. And I'm really seeing that in thinking this out today. you have to kind of be all three. You may see yourself as one, but what I'm hoping is in this book, I convinced you to do all three. Okay, that's good. All right, so clarify your idea. This may need to change a little bit based on the puzzle pieces. So, okay, clarify, plan, do. So I'm gonna keep with the team. Clarify. I clarified that in my scenario, I would want, if I had to pick the other two, I would say I want to be the visionary and I want to find a hacker and a hustler. I just clarified that. Now, what is my plan to get the hacker and the hustler? Go to meetups. That's harder now because we're virtual. So how do I find a hacker that's interested in my idea? How do I find a hustler that's interested in my idea? What do I have to show them and convince them that they want to be involved in my idea? And again, I want you to think about this from an entrepreneur standpoint, an investor standpoint, and a supporter standpoint. Because if you can say, and I'm going to do it right now, how do I get a hacker on board with my idea? One, I have to tell them you are going to be the lead investor in this idea, along with me. So no one will own more than this of this company than me and you and potentially the hustler. But since I'm coming to you first as the hacker, because I believe I need the hacker first, you stand to make the most other than me because I'm spending more time than you on the idea. You might end up making more than me because we're going to use this system called slicing pie, which is a system I'm using right now that just is based on our time. And the way it works is based on your time, you own a different amount of equity based on how much time you spend on an idea. So right now, I clarified. Now I'm planning how to bring these people on. Tell them, look, we're going to use slicing pie. Slicing pie is this method that all the time you use, I either pay you or it's an investment in the company. And every hour you spend in the company is an investment in the company, and we're tracking it. So when an actual money investor comes in, we understand what our equity is. It's not based on I just say we're 50-50 partners. And then we bring somebody else in and now we're 33-33-33. No, it's going to be based on what we do, including me as the person that came up with the idea. So now I have a plan. I'm going to tell them. So what do I have to show them? Do I just need to talk about it? Maybe I can try that out. Clarify. How do I explain the idea? Why is it worth their time? Talk to potential investors early. Talk to potential customers early. Don't worry about people stealing your idea. Nobody, remember, shower, exit. Very rarely is somebody going to take your idea from shower and say, ooh, I'm stealing that and I'm going to get to exit. It's like close to impossible. So you don't want that to make you worry. So maybe that's how I do this. I get the puzzle pieces and I give you each part of the puzzle piece. All right, there you go. I just changed that right here at the end of the last book episode for a while. I think the last episode I'm gonna do is book episode 10, where I'm ready to submit the book. I think that's what I'm gonna do. If anybody watched all this, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I truly thank you for watching even a second of, especially this episode. And I hope you got some type of value out of it in any way, whether it's creating a book, learning a process of how to create a book, information on making a company, an innovation. I think I just figured it out. I'm going to make the puzzle pieces. I'm going to talk about each puzzle piece and interchange entrepreneur, investor, supporter. I think that's it. I think I got it. Love it. I love it. Okay, so that changes a lot of this. It really does. And it also makes it a lot more understandable. All right. I think this is a good place to end it. I didn't even do an hour. But I'll take the last 4 minutes and just talk about next steps. As I said in previous episodes, I'm going to look at angling more towards innovation. I may make a tagline. I've been having conversations with people about the name Entrepreneur Hour. Everybody seems to like it. I'm going to make a tagline around something with innovation, though. I'm going to keep the title and then say helping communities innovate, something like that. Helping entrepreneurs, investors, and supporters with innovation. I want to lead it all back to the book, the show, the course. Is all my personal brand. I help you clarify, plan, and do. So all of this, everything I do should tie back into that. So that's super fun. I'm looking forward to really figuring all that out. I'm looking forward to figuring out how to involve the kids and having the kids choose guests that they're interested in and having them reach out to the guests and getting them on the show. I'm really looking forward to all that. I'm really looking forward to having my own kids involved, forcing them to be involved against their will. I know they want to play Fortnite, but I'm going to figure out how to make sure they're involved in this summer. I think this summer is going to be a pretty special time for me, for Meta Bronx, and for anyone who's interested in this this innovation economy. If you're watching, again, thank you for giving me even a second of your time, and I look forward to taking things to the next level and figuring out how to help more and more people clarify, plan, and do. And again, thank you. If you got this far, like it, subscribe wherever you're seeing it. I hope I'm bringing you value, and I plan to bring you way more value. Thank you.